2024. Whatever happens, it's going to be a year to remember. In the big story, do New Year's resolutions work? How can we get the best out of the year to come? And should we give the place a spring clean? Who better to ask than TV star Channel 4's Queen of Clean, Kim Woodburn, who's going to give the whole nation a rousing pep talk as we embark on the next 12 months. It's election year. That's going to be the only story in town. When will it happen? And who's going to win? I'll be asking TV news legend John Sargent. 2 hours of big opinion, big debate, big entertainment and a big celebration of the new year. First, the headlines.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Thousands have been urged to seek shelter tonight in Japan after the country was hit by a powerful earthquake today. 4 people are dead after Japan was hit by several earthquakes, resulting in evacuations and tsunami warnings. Emergency services have been responding to multiple fires and up to 30 collapsed buildings after a 7.6 magnitude quake hit the centre of the country. Tens of thousands of people have been left without power and evacuation orders remain in place for coastal areas, although all tsunami warnings issued earlier today have been downgraded to an advisory. Smaller tsunami waves have hit the coastline, but no damage has been reported from nuclear power plants along the Sea of Japan. An official from the country's meteorological agency says more earthquakes are expected. A teenage boy who died after being stabbed on New Year's Eve in London has been named as Harry Pittman. The 16-year-old was pronounced dead shortly before midnight in Primrose Hill, a popular viewpoint where families had gathered to watch the fireworks. A male has been arrested on suspicion of murder and is in police custody. Officers have said Primrose Hill was particularly busy at that time of the incident. A woman accused of murdering 2 of her children in the United States has appeared in a British court. Kimberly Singler's 9-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son were found dead in a residential property in Colorado, along with her 11-year-old daughter, who was injured but alive. The woman initially collaborated with the investigation, but later reportedly disappeared, and an arrest warrant was issued for murder charges. She escaped to the UK and was apprehended by the National Crime Agency in West London. Almost 30,000 migrants crossed the Channel to Britain in small boats last year. That's down by almost a third on the number of crossings from 2022, although it's the second largest total since numbers were first published 6 years ago. No attempts to cross the Channel have taken place since mid-December because of bad weather. And thousands gathered on the streets of central London today to ring in the new year with the one and only pop singer Chesney Hawkes greeted spectators along the 2-mile route with dancers and brass bands. Families even witnessed a brief invasion.
Oppan Gangnam Style.
The 2024 parade, which started in 1987, marched from Green Park to the Palace of Westminster. This is GB News on TV, online, on your smart speaker. I'll be back with more news in the top of the hour.
Happy New Year, one and all, and welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, my vision for Britain in 2024, whatever happens, it's going to be a year to remember. In the big story, do New Year's resolutions work? Who better to ask than TV star Channel 4's Queen of Clean, Kim Woodburn, who's going to give the whole nation a rousing pep talk as we embark on the next 12 months. It's election year. That's going to be the only story in town. When will it happen? And who wins? I'll be asking TV news icon John Sargent. And at 10, my pundits predict the new year. Author and journalist Emma Wolfe, TV star Junaid Ahmed, and GB News icon Bev Turner. Plus, the most important part of the show, your emails. I asked for you to send me your wishes for 2024. Before Christmas, I'll be reading some of those out throughout the programme. And this show has a golden rule. It's even stricter for 2024. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. A big 2 hours to come, a big celebration of the new year, and we start with my big opinion. It's funny, isn't it? All we want for the new year is a return to the good old days, to take back what we've lost. In 2024, we want to be able to crack a joke and not worry that someone will be offended or triggered, or that it will see us landing in hot water with colleagues or friends. We want an economy that works for people who work, where it pays to get up in the morning and put in a shift, and not see our money eviscerated by inflation, tax, the cost of putting petrol in your car, or the cost of keeping a roof over your head. Now, January the 1st is always a clean slate, a chance to zero out the scoreboard and start again. The new year is a new chapter, a new start. Whilst its consequences are still being felt, the pandemic is a good couple of years behind us, and Britain is on the road to recovery. It was a sweet victory for this country to notice that we avoided recession, even though the prophets of doom at the IMF predicted that there would be a whole recession for the whole of 2023. Meanwhile, Germany and the Eurozone languished in the red. Even the Guardian newspaper have admitted that Brexit hasn't been the disaster it was painted as, with exports to the EU and the rest of the world at record highs, investment into Britain higher than Germany, France and Italy combined, and the UK leapfrogging France to number 8 in the world for manufacturing. So much for the idea that we don't make anything anymore. So whilst this new year is still going to be hard and bring challenges, we are scarred but not broken, and it's time to kick on. Inflation is expected to fall further, which is the ultimate tax cut, and interest rates should nudge downward next year, as I predicted way back in 2022. It was an unfashionable opinion then, but then I specialise in those. Forget about politicians this coming year. It's people power that will see us through. There's bugger all difference between Labour and the Tories these days, and so it's our mindset as Brits that will be the making of us. We have a productive, dynamic, diverse and creative country. And in 2024, it's time to put our talents to good use. This year, we've got to tackle the 5 million people of working age, 5 million people not active in the economy, so they can make their contribution and make something of their lives. It's time to get more people back to the office and boost productivity. And it's time to believe in Britain and its vast potential. Whether you love it or hate it, the UK has pretty much shrugged off its departure from the EU without any great drama. And we now have the sovereignty and the politicians have the levers to pull to take Britain to the next level. The national debt is now over £2 trillion. It's got to come down. We've got a deficit where more is going out than comes in. That's got to stop. 2024 is the year when we have to wake up and smell the coffee. Just like your average British household, the country too must live within its means. Now, how do you do that? Well, you do that in two ways: by going for growth and controlling public spending, which means tough choices. It means a smaller state, lower taxes and a more productive economy. National income is how we pay for the NHS, for policing and for schools, not borrowed billions for the next generation to face. The boats have to stop too, because they are an economic, national security and humanitarian disaster. The goal should be 0 illegal crossings. 0. Hopefully that's a figure that politicians can remember and be judged by. We've also got to tackle the elephant in the room: legal net migration, which was almost 700,000 in the year ending June 2023. The goal should be 100k tops per year until Britain's infrastructure, whether it's school places, transport or housing, has been able to catch up. Plus, there's the small matter of a general election. The Tories are likely going to lose, regroup and hopefully find a philosophy and a backbone. And Labour will get 5 years to have a go. Now, whilst I have well-reported doubts about Keir Starmer's character and his fitness to be Prime Minister, there is an inescapable sense that the Tories don't deserve to be in power. It may be someone else's turn to bugger things up. If Starmer gets the top job, I will wish him well and support his efforts. But I'm not optimistic. At the moment, choosing between the Tories and Labour is like choosing your favourite Cray twin. But in the end, perhaps a change might be cleansing, almost healing for the country. Thanks to the wild and, in my view, completely failed experiment of lockdowns and efforts to stop a respiratory virus, the cupboard is now bare. Britain is broke, which means a Labour government, particularly under a moderate figure like Starmer, isn't nearly the threat that it might once have been. I still prefer Sunak. I think he edges it over Starmer as the best potential CEO of the country. But his party is badly tainted, which could ultimately do for him. And I think that's a shame. But who knows? There are a lot of potential Tory voters out there, and I've never actually met a Keir Starmer fan. Hung Parliament, narrow Tory majority, stranger things have happened. In the end, whether it's the politicians or us, the great British public, it is all to play for in 2024. It's going to be a year of opportunity, of high drama and of excitement. Life, as you know, is what you make of it. I think 2024 will be the year where Britain begins to repair, to recover and to reinvent. History tells us we've done it before and we'll do it again. In 2023, the best for many was to survive. Well, in 2024, it's time to thrive. So happy New Year, one and all. Wishing you a year of wealth, health, joy, friendship, family and happiness. Let's make 2024 one to remember, this time for all the right reasons. So reacting to the first big opinion of 2024, author and journalist Emma Wolfe, TV star Junaid Ahmed and GB News icon Bev Turner. Bev, let me start with you. Are you optimistic about 2024?
No, I'm deeply pessimistic about 2024, but I am interested in 2024. I think particularly from a politics point of view, 2024, we've got an election in this country, probably, and we're going to have an American election, of course, in November as well. So there is so much change that is going to happen in 2024. And I think you hit the nail on the head, actually, in your monologue, Mark, about a lot of the issues that we're facing as a country. Getting people back to work is a huge issue in this country. Is. We are still in the hangover of lockdowns, regardless of what you think. We're going to be sat through more torturous COVID inquiry stuff in the next year. We're going to probably be drowning in the green agenda again. And my prediction is going to be a massive pandemic of a cyber attack.
Oh dear! Well, a jolly appraisal on the 1st
Happy New Year, all.
On the 1st of January. I think I need another glass of glue wine just to take the edge off that.
I think you do.
Emma, what about wokery, political correctness this year? Is it going to be a big thing?
I think it's either going to die a catastrophic death, or it's just going to carry on. I'm with Bev. Unfortunately, I don't feel... We should, on New Year's Day, we should always feel optimistic. I don't feel very optimistic for 2024. I think we're going to have more nonsense. I loved in your monologue when you said 2023, in 2023, the best for many was to survive. In 2024, it's time to thrive. I think, the pandemic, it did such horrific long-term damage, but we've got to move on. We've got to put it behind us. The economy, I don't feel optimistic at all about the economy. Interesting, obviously, from a political point of view. I think the right are going to catastrophically split, and I think we'll probably end up with a Labour government of some shape. It's going to be a messy, nasty, angry election.
Well, look, Junaid, you've had a successful career in TV by being a very positive person. That's one of the central themes of My Big Opinion, is we've got to crack on. The glass has got to be half full. Let's do this.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to 2024. I think, fingers crossed, it's going to be a good year. Let's start it off with a positive attitude.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, we can't beat around the bush. There's so much going on in politics and what's going on in the UK right now. I'm hoping for a better 2024. And do you know what? I think my biggest prediction for the year is, Mark, you're going to go in the jungle. You're going to follow Nigel, and I feel like you're going to go in the jungle.
Junaid, you've gone mad.
That is what I feel.
They can't afford me.
They definitely can.
He has no weight to lose. You can't go in the jungle.
I think you should. Right. I think you should embrace everything.
Well,
just have an exciting year.
I love that.
One thing.
Go on then.
No bottom shots.
Never. Well, you would have to be able to see it first. You'd need a telephoto lens. Fascinating stuff. Well, listen, there you go. Those are the views of my brilliant pundits tonight. Lots more to come. Don't go anywhere. This is Mark Dolan Tonight.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to the show. Happy New Year, one and all. Now, just before Christmas, I asked you on air whether you could offer me via email your hopes for 2024. So here's what you told me a couple of weeks back. Tricia says, I hope that the boats and other illegal means of crossing the English Channel are stopped and are all illegally arrived persons are returned to France. This is their problem, not ours. We are an island with borders. Well, we used to be, Tricia, didn't we? How about this from Dan? No more boats? Scott, peace and happiness for mankind is a nice one and one to truly hope for. However, I'll start with control of our borders pronto. Mario, a general election. And Nigel says, please could we regularly have the British Democrats on GB News? Also, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Senator Ted Cruz as well. Brilliant stuff. Well, look, thank you so much for that. More of your wishes for 2024 to come. But it is that time of the year when people go around with a list of New Year's resolutions. All very well-meaning, but most of us have run out of steam by mid-January. So do New Year's resolutions work or not? And can you think of anything worse than dry January? What is the best way to start the year? Who better to ask than TV star and Channel 4's Queen of Clean, Kim Woodburn. Kim, Happy New Year. Do New Year's resolutions work?
Well, can I say Happy New Year to all the viewers? And I had a wonderful New Year's Eve. I hope you did, my loves. Well, you know what? Do the resolutions work? Well, usually not, because we start off so sort of, the diet, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Or what? I'm going to be nicer to people. Oh, please. I'm going to be nicer to people. I'm going to be more tolerant. No, you're not. I'm going to sort of, you know what? We start off well-meaning, but honestly, my love, few of us keep our resolutions. Few of us. The ones that do have got more willpower than most of us. Good luck to you. Most of us don't, dear. Simple as that.
Well, what about drinking? Because for many people, it's dry January. Are you going to go dry this year, Kim?
Well, I'm going to say this might shock you, Mark. I don't drink much at all, dear. I spill most.
You don't need it.
No, honestly, no. Do you know what? I don't drink much at all. I really don't. But I think if people look, drink in moderation. If you know you're overdoing it, please try to stop. One is so costly, and with the way things are going today, where are you getting the money from? And when you see people walking around smoking, and they get benefits, and you think, well, not all of them get benefits, some do, and you think, how are you affording a packet of cigarettes for £20, dear, when you're not working? But as I say, not all people smoke, some are working, and I say, try to manage yourself better. Also, my lovely, if you've got nothing to do, clean your house. Clean your house. I'm sick of going to houses that are grubby, dear. Grubby, well, some are filthy, dear. And you wouldn't sit on that loo, you'd rather go in the garden.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Kim. What are the telltale signs of a dirty house?
Oh, Lord. Well, use the toilet first of all, my lovely, and you'll see the feces on the toilet seat, hard and dry. You'll see the toilet stained inside with pee. The outside of the toilet with men, because why you men pebble dash is beyond me. Why can you men not hold your bits in your hand and aim down the loo? Why are you pebble dashing the bathroom? No, so why don't you learn to pee? I'm sorry, pee's not a dirty word. Although, why can't you pee straight, dear? Or what? Do you know what? Why don't you? This is a plan. Lift up the seat. I hope you listen to me, because you do it, Mark. I know. Lift up the seat. Sit on the seat. And put your private bits in the toilet bowl, and you could pee to your heart's content. It wouldn't go anywhere. Have you thought of that, you men?
Well, you're right to point this out. Men are absolutely disgusting, and I'm not going to defend my half of the species. Did you know that in Austria, it's a tradition for the men to be ordered to sit down when they have a wee in certain houses? Would you approve of that as a rule?
I certainly would. Oh, Mark, you wouldn't have to ask me twice. Why do men, and I'll tell you what annoys me, us women are sick of this, these communal toilets, dear, where you've got to use a toilet a man's used. I had to go, I was dying to go, and I had to go the other day that I was filming in, actually, and it was male and female, and it was soaking wet. They should not have communal toilets for male and female. If you're going to pee, I don't want you peeing in my toilet. It's disgusting. And you want to put your foot...
Yeah, can I apologise to anyone that's having a late dinner, maybe some turkey sandwiches? But listen, I think, Kim, it's nice to start the new year with a bit of, quite literally, toilet humour. Can I ask you about the new year? Are you optimistic for 2024, Kim?
Oh, do you know what? On quite a serious note, I'll tell you. Do you know what I'd love to see happen? I'd like to see us, all the people in this country, go back to the health and safety we used to have, with no question. Let me tell you what I mean. We have a very poor NHS now. We can't get appointments. There are people dying because they can't get surgery. It's wrong. We used to have a super NHS. We had a little girl. We'd gone through the war and it started. It was wonderful. I also want us to have safety. We no longer have it in this country. We have a depleted police force. We have no law and order. I'd love to see. You're going to call. I don't care if you think I'm awful, people. It's tough. Get on with it. I'd like to see more prisons, 3 times the police officers, very strong sentences. When I was a kid, you did not hear a policeman told you do the other. I'm not going into the language. You wouldn't dare speak to a policeman like that. You wouldn't dare, because if you did, you'd be locked up. People are treating policemen like filth. Our government, weak. They will not build extra prisons, tough sentences for them all, and don't put them in prison and feed them on steaks and let them exercise rooms. Put them forward to a cell. I'm sorry, I'm very angry about all this. My husband was a police officer. My first husband was a police. I've had 2 policemen for husbands, and it was very different then. Today, my husband will say to me, I would not join the police force now the way it is. For heaven's sake, Home Office, do something to restore law and order. Stop these people cursing and kicking police officers and then being let out next morning with a breakfast. Well, you're stupid. You're stupid. I live in a dangerous country. You've got, it's due to you, for heaven's sake, and also the health system. Now, look, we want doctors, we want nurses. Of course we do. We don't pay them enough. So what they do is, when they train, a lot of them go abroad, where they'll get twice the pay. Can you blame them? Can you seriously blame them? And yet, we're now employing nurses from abroad and doctors, and we're allowing them to come into this country. And if you can bring my husband or my wife and my 3 children, I'll come over to your country and I'll nurse. And we say, you come in, we're short of nurses. What do you think that's costing us in this country? What do you think it's costing to support the nurse or the doctor and their family of 3 or 4? How can you tell me we're saving money? Pay our nurses and doctors more. Treasure them and treasure the police force, because without health and safety, which we don't have, this country, we have nothing. And that's my opinion.
Well, listen, Kim, you mustn't apologise for your views, because they are shared by many of my viewers and listeners. And I think you've raised a lot of important issues for the country. I know it's going to be a good 2024 because you're going to be part of it, Kim. I do hope that you're going to be a regular feature on Mark Dolan Tonight for the next 12 months. Can I sign you up now as a star regular on the show? Will you sign that deal?
Yes, I will do that, dear. But listen, Mark, I'd love to be a regular on the show. You know I'd love to. But listen, dear, when are you and I getting together, dear? I mean, you promised me, I'm on a permanent promise with you, dear. You and I can have a date or something, and we can make sweet music, dear. I mean, I'm 81 years of experience, dear. I mean, you die with a smile on your face, love.
Yes, the problem I've got is if I meet you in the flesh, I couldn't be held responsible for my own actions, Kim.
Oh, dear, I'm not complaining. Feel free, dear. Stop. You're teasing me again.
Kim, I'll be taking you up on your invitation. I do hope that husband of yours is not too strong and muscular. The brilliant Kim Woodburn, Happy New Year, darling, and we'll see you really soon. Brilliant stuff. Well, coming up, it's election year. That's going to be the only story in town for 2024. When will the election happen and who wins? I'll be asking TV news legend John Sargent next.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is very exciting. This is a New Year's resolution, a hope for 2024 from Steve, who says, why can't we all just get along and accept that we've got different viewpoints? Amen to that. Well, this year is a big one for politics, both in the UK, with a general election looming, and in the United States. So let's not do that intro. Exactly, we need the John Sargent intro, don't we? Apologies, everyone. There we are. Brilliant. I'll pick that up. And I'll do that email again, yeah? Welcome back to the show. Happy New Year, one and all. I've been asking for your wishes for 2024. I asked for these just before Christmas, and this is from Steve, who said, I hope that we can all just get along in the new year and accept that we have different views, but that doesn't mean we have to fall out. Amen to that. Well, here in the UK, the big story of the year is clearly going to be a general election, the first since 2019. Have Labour already won it? Are we looking at a hung parliament or an unlikely Tory win? Sat next to me is the only man that can possibly know. TV news legend John Sargent. John, should we start with a slightly easier question? The date of the next election. What's the... What
no,
do you
that's
think?
not at all. No, it looks quite simple. You think, well, play it long, and that you could do it right up to the end of the year. And in fact, January next year is the absolute cut-off. Yeah. And then you have to go. So you've done your 5 years, and that's it. So there's nothing the government can do. And because of that, because they want to have the element of surprise and say, look, we're going to the country, it's much better if they can to choose the date. So frequently in recent years, it's been after 4 years. So already we're sort of right in the zone now. At any point, you could say, well, natural term, we're now going to an election. And it wouldn't be, let's run to the country. So there are really two possibilities. One is the spring, and the other one, I think, is the autumn.
Well, indeed. I mean,
People don't like voting in the winter.
Right. Well, this is. I mean, if they wait till October, November, or January, they look like a hostage to fortune. I've been of the view that Sunak should go to the country in May, because that way he's owning it. I think the message is a very confident one, which is, I'm going to go early. That's how committed I am to my vision for this country.
Yeah, but then you see, if the opinion polls are saying you might be brilliant, you might be, you might feel terribly confident, but you're not going to win. And this was always the argument. I mean, it was the argument when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister, oh, if only he'd gone in October instead of the next spring. Well, sure.
Callaghan, of course, in 78.
And Callaghan in 78 to 79.
Yeah.
But and everyone says, oh, that was a mistake. But he'd have lost it in the autumn. So there's no point in being wonderfully clever and losing, isn't it? I mean, it really, everything depends on you've got to try and make sure that you've done everything you can to win. Now, the advantage, I think, of an early election would be to say, now, look, we've not cleared up the boats question. We want to stop the boats. We're committed to this plan, but we can't wrap it all up. No flights are going to leave until the election anyway, probably. There's going to be an argument with the lawyers. It's going to take time.
Appeals the lot.
So why not go soon, relatively soon, and say, well, OK, we've not finished this, but if you want us to finish the job, don't let Labour ruin it. Now, it's an old cry in elections. You know, make sure that you, as you say, you take the decision, you do it. So there is a temptation, if you can get to that position, particularly if you think your position on this subject is going to get worse or no better. So, you know, it's all sort of... And in the end, people just say, oh, look, this is the last year of this government. So do what you want to do. I mean, you know.
Yeah. We know the expression from US politics, it's the economy stupid. But I wonder whether this year it's immigration stupid.
Well, it could be. And you see that there is the strongest dividing line between the Conservatives and Labour at the moment is the Conservatives are convinced they've got a plan as to what to do with the boats, which is Rwanda, and Labour have not got that. They're not backing it, they're not supporting it. And so when the interviewers turn around and say, well, what would Labour do? The answer is pretty much the same as what the government are doing now, which is to chase after the smugglers, the people smugglers, to try and break their system in police terms, cooperate with the other countries. But you see, Rwanda, for those people who are not following it inch by inch, think, oh, that'd be, you know, at least it's tough, at least it's right-wing, at least it's sort of decisive. Now, it may not look like they're the spring, so I don't want to exaggerate the advantages of doing this, but at least if they went early, they could say, these are problems down the road, we understand there are problems, but we think we are determined to see it through. And then fight the election mentioning immigration as much as you can. I mean, I'd say look, this is a high gamble. Don't get me wrong. This is not sort of, oh, so you're saying that's what ought to happen. It's all simple. No. But they may just be forced to do that because anything else might look weak and pathetic.
How presidential is British politics in 2024? Will this be the Conservative versus Labour with some degree of influence from the Lib Dems and Reform UK? Or is it Starmer versus Sunak?
Well, there's always an element of that, but I remember when Margaret Thatcher was fighting the election where she won, and nobody had a woman Prime Minister before, and I thought, well, I'm not sure this isn't going to work. She wasn't very effective at Prime Minister's questions as leader of the opposition. So a lot of arguments saying, you know, is she the first woman? Is she not that good? Will she get it? But actually, they'd worked out their policy, and so the policy at that time was firm. She knew what she was standing for, and a lot of people knew that, and so in her own way, she was perfectly effective. She wasn't as good at the dispatch box as Callaghan was, because he was bluff and, you know, tall, and he would give
quite charismatic, good-humoured.
Good-humoured, in charge, very Brit, you know, let's be calm about this, and all this sort of stuff. But she got into it and got right under it, and people thought, this is a serious woman with serious policies. So I think the idea that you can just have personalities and let them fight it out as if it's just a personality contest, no. The joy of our system is that what you see, and what you're seeing now, is a government of one kind or the other forming on both sides. So at the end of it, unlike when you have proportional representation where you don't know what the government will look like after the election, we know it's going to be either a Conservative government, maybe with some support, or a Labour government, maybe with some support. But broadly speaking, we will know their programme. What are you going to do about health? What are you going to do about this? All those questions will be asked. That's our system. And it means that the centre ground is incredibly important. That's what happens.
You mentioned policies, and that ought to be, you know, every election should be a competition of ideas and the best policies being proposed. And you say that always generally happens around polling day. But what about Sunak then? Not Sunak, Starmer. Starmer has a dilemma, which is, does he reveal any of his policies, or does he keep stum and hope that the public will just choose Labour because they're better than the Tories?
That's the gamble. You see, if he takes too many, if he gives too much detail, it'll upset his backbenchers, because they'll say, look, he's ruling out this, he's not giving much hope. it's extremely difficult. It's always a matter between sort of, I don't know, fear and hope. Those are two sides of the election battle wherever it takes place. And either hope is, look, vote for us and we'll give you this and give you that, or if you don't vote for us, you've got that lot. And so it's hope versus fear throughout the campaign.
And surely Starmer will lean in on the fear, because whenever he's outlined his plans to stop the boats, for example, he's talked about collaborating with our European counterparts, which of course went down like a lead balloon. The possible idea of accepting 100,000 migrants a year in a deal with Brussels. So whenever you get the detail from Starmer, that's a gamble.
That is. And of course, he then begins to think, and what does he do about money? You see, what everybody wants is, they always want lots of goodies. They want cuts in taxes, of course, and lots spent on the things they like. Health, education, the roads, potholes, all the rest of it. And as many of those things pile up on one side, and of course you can't square the circle. But it's an elaborate game, and this is why it's a mistake, I think, to imagine that just because the polls at the moment are so obviously in Labour's favour, it's a mistake to imagine it'll be exactly the same when the election comes.
And it would take a colossal swing, plus we've got those sort of shy Tory voters. I mean, how many people are going to say to an 18-year-old in a wind cheater on the street that they're voting Tory? They might think they're voting Tory, but would they admit to it? So, you know, we've had our fingers burnt in the past from poll predictions, haven't we? You're not a betting man, I don't think, John, but what about the dark horse option, the outside chance of a hung parliament?
No, it's not. No, it's not. That's not an outside chance. There's quite a good chance of that. So, I mean, you could, if you're throwing your money at it, don't go for an outright win. Maybe just say, look, could be either Labour with no overall majority or the Conservatives no overall majority. Maybe that's what we're talking about. You're talking about the battle in the centre ground. That's what happens. And remember, both sides are looking at the same opinion poll data.
Yeah.
So they're all ready to press hot buttons.
We could have two elections in a year, John.
We could do. Remember 1974, which was the first two elections that I covered very closely, with Ted Heath as leader on both sides, him being leader, Prime Minister, and then leader of the opposition.
Yeah.
And his argument was, let the people decide who's running this country. Is it the unions or is it the government? So the reply from the public was, well, it's not you running the country. You know, I mean, it just sort of, it took people by surprise, because it seemed so sort of, well, that'll sort it, won't it? Because the opinion polls are saying the unions were unpopular. You see, you can be very careful about using the opinion polls as a kind of yardstick. You know, if they're saying this, we do that, therefore that. It doesn't work like that.
I'm puzzled by Labour's lead, I'll be honest. I know that the Tories are a toxic brand and they've absolutely shot themselves in the foot on more than one occasion in the last few years, particularly with so many prime ministers in the last couple of years. But you've got Sunak, who I think outside of the Tory brand is still quite a respected figure. I think he edges it as the best potential CEO for the country over Starmer. I'm wondering whether voters will take the same view. But look at Labour, look at some of the detail. Are they going to stop the boats, given that Starmer has said he'll axe the Rwanda policy even if it works? Are Labour going to tackle inflation, given they'll be under pressure to spend money on public services and give out pay rises in the public sector? How on earth can Labour be characterised as the answer to Britain's problems?
Well, they can if Rishi Sunak has lost authority by then. If there's more shambles over immigration, more shambles over all sorts of things, maybe inflation will pick up again. I mean, you then get into a position where you think, well, no, whatever happens, this lot, we just got to see the back of them. And that can be a very strong force. When Callaghan was writing the election campaign of 79, he said there are times when whatever you do, you can't win. You just, you've had it. You've just passed your time. And out you go.
Look, it changes every day. It's like the stock market. But at this moment in time, your gut feeling about the outcome of the next election, what do you think? Labour edge it, 20 seats?
Labour with a small majority would be my guess. But it's a wild guess.
John, always a treat. Happy New Year to you, Mary, and the boys.
And the boys.
And I hope there's plenty of John Sargent in 2024 on Mark Dolan tonight. OK, folks, time for a quick break. I'll see you in 2. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. Let's take a look back at some of the highlights from 2023. You've had a bit of a skim read of the book. What are your first impressions?
Well, my first impressions, I mean, look, this was a book that suddenly escaped the publishers and was sort of escaped into Spain. And that
leakier than a church roof, this book, isn't it?
It was. But what's interesting, here is a book that, 1.5 million copies sold, and the interview and all of it's now gone throughout 77 territories throughout the world. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a biography like it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I've read it, as you said, as best I can. And there's a lot of history there about his military career, a lot about his mother, and a lot about his early life, etc., which is, readable. But of course, what everyone's picked up are the information about his time in Afghanistan. Yeah. The sort of salacious stories about him losing his virginity in a sort of pub car park near his father's house in Gloucestershire and so forth, which, really I think sort of doesn't do him any service, but I think particularly as bad was, this notching up 25 kills in Afghanistan. Now, a lot of noted, royal sort of military personnel, both serving and retired, have made, serious comments about that. And I think that was a huge mistake. And
that would be a headache for you if he was in your care now, if you were his bodyguard today. You'd have a problem with that, wouldn't you?
Well, I would have a problem. And the fact that he's made that statement, and in today's climate, we have people from the Taliban, making that. I mean, social media today is so worldwide, it's so instant, that does pose a threat, in my view. And, other security advisors have said exactly the same this week. And it's not just for him, it's for other members of the royal family and possibly other serving, and sort of retired officers from the military as well. Because it was quite a serious thing to sort of notch up your kills, as an army, in his case, an army officer, which has been condemned by colleagues and other senior military personnel. So I think that was a big mistake. But the point, Mark, here is that to write a book is one thing, But to suddenly not have somebody with some expertise to go through that copy with you and say, look, a great read, maybe. You know, tell us about your life or whatever, but listen, this isn't a good idea. And are you sure you want to say that about your brother? You really want to air this washing publicly? And I think, had that happened, maybe we'd have had a different story here.
Yes, a duty of care to Harry himself, his family, and the wider public, due diligence, and essentially just, as you say, fact-checking a few things. You talked about his early years. You were there for many of his early years. Did you recognise what he wrote about as to have been the truth?
I think there was a lot there that was truthful, but I mean, a lot that he didn't include in it. I mean, I think what was interesting, as two children, and you know, two young boys, they had an extraordinary life together. You know, they were blissfully unaware of the unhappiness of their respective parents, of course.
So is the monarchy in terminal decline, or will the forthcoming coronation save the royal family? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome royal expert, author, socialite and TV personality, Lady Colin Campbell. Hi, Lady Colin Campbell.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. Wonderful to have you on the show. Do you worry for the long-term future of our monarchy?
I do. I've been saying for years that Charles's idea of a slimmed-down monarchy doesn't make sense. I know this because long before I was a writer, I was a fundraiser for charity, unpaid. And in fact, the Sunday Express, when they did the top 40 fundraisers of charity in, I think, 1989, I was number 3. And you cannot have a slimmed-down monarchy doing the work, most of which is thankless and is unglamorous and, you know, is supporting minor charities that are never going to get into the media, or doing other basic work, for instance, going to schools, rewarding headmistresses for doing a wonderful job, or going to hospitals, seeing nurses and patients. None of this gets reported. 98% of the work that the average royal does is unreported, it's unglamorous, it's boring, it's dull, it's perfunctory, but it rewards people who are essential to the fabric of this country and who are working for the well-being of this country. And if you do not have them doing that, you have a major problem across the board. And as for charity itself, it's all about bums on seats. If you don't have a royal, it's much more difficult to get bums on seats.
US News with the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, my bestie on the other side of the pond. Hi, Kinsey.
Mark, that tie is a lot, okay? That tie requires some shades.
I got very excited. I thought I had Elton John on the show for a second. But we've got the far more gorgeous Kinsey Schofield, who boasts her own hair. Can we talk about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and that coronation?
Well, we're calling them the Duke and Duchess of Hash over here because we're you know, they're talking a lot about drug use, and we're concerned about how they got in, how at least Prince Harry got his visa. But yeah, there's a story circulating online now that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex want a special family moment, and they would like to appear on the balcony alongside King Charles, Queen Consort Camilla, Prince William, and Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Now, as you can imagine, royal watchers are none too thrilled about this. You know, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex did not appear on the balcony during the Platinum Jubilee. So it's, you know, interesting that they would want to appear on the balcony for King Charles's coronation. And, you know, I have to tell you, if you're looking for a special family moment, Thomas Markle lives in the same time zone as you. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call your dad, Meghan.
And now, every week when we speak, it's will they, won't they? Sadly, that's not about you and I, because you're out of my league, but about whether Harry and Meghan will attend the coronation. Do you think it's going to happen? Will the pair appear?
Oh, I bet you they will, Mark. It is I think that they're both going to come because Meghan wants that tiara moment. It's been a long time since she's got to wear something sparkly on her head, and they need to remind the world that they are associated with the royal family because, as you know, that's their business. That has become their sole brand, their association with the royal family. But I will say that one of Diana's friends, because I have a blog and a podcast about Princess Diana, To Die For Daily, one of Diana's friends told me she hopes that they do not go, and she does not believe they should be on the balcony.
One of Diana's friends. And what motivates that view, do you think? What's behind it?
She thinks that they have disrespected the monarchy and they talk too much.
OK, folks, plenty more where that came from. I'll see you after the break.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vautry here for GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. 2023 was a wetter than average year for the vast majority of us, and 2024 has started off on a relatively similar theme. We've got this band of rain sweeping its way across the majority of the UK. We'll start falling a snow over higher ground areas of Scotland as it pushes into colder air ahead of it. Some travel disruption is possible overnight with strong winds developing across southern coastal areas of England and for Shetland and Orkney as well. Temperatures in the south will be relatively mild, dropping down to around 11-12 degrees Celsius, but some frost is possible for Scotland first thing on Tuesday. That band of rain will push its way northwards, eventually stalling across the far northern Isles. Other southern eastern areas should see some brighter spells developing for the bank holiday here, but there's more rain on the cards for England, Wales, perhaps into the far southeast of Northern Ireland, eventually spreading into the far south of Scotland as well. So some localised flooding is possible during Tuesday. Temperatures generally ranging between 8 and 13 degrees Celsius, but probably feeling colder due to the strength of the winds. One of those areas of low pressure does eventually clear its way off towards the continent, but we've got another one that is lingering to northwest of the UK as we head into Wednesday. Still with some persistent rainfall for parts of Shetland and Orkney, some strong gales here as well. Further brisk westerly winds pushing in showers for the rest of the UK. Most of those showers frequent in the west and heavy at times. Some brighter spells perhaps for eastern areas. Showers turning fewer and further between as we head into the second half of the week. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight. Happy New Year, one and all. Well, coming up, my pundits predict the new year. Author and journalist Emma Wolf, TV star Junaid Ahmed, and GB News icon Bev Turner. First, the headlines.
Good evening, it's 10 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. At least 6 people are dead after a huge earthquake rocked Japan today. Japan was hit by several earthquakes, resulting in evacuations and tsunami warnings. Emergency services have been responding to multiple fires and up to 30 collapsed buildings after a 7.6 magnitude quake hit the centre of the country. Tens of thousands of people have been left without power and evacuation orders remain in place for coastal areas, although all tsunami warnings issued earlier today have been downgraded to an advisory. Smaller tsunami waves have hit the coastline, but no damage has been reported from nuclear power plants along the Sea of Japan. An official from the country's meteorological agency says more earthquakes are expected. The teenage boy who died after being stabbed on New Year's Eve in London has been named as Harry Pittman. The 16-year-old was pronounced dead shortly before midnight in Primrose Hill, a popular viewpoint where families had gathered to watch the fireworks. A male has been arrested on suspicion of murder and is in police custody. Officers have said Primrose Hill was particularly busy at the time of the incident. A woman accused of murdering 2 of her children in the United States has appeared in a British court. Kimberly Singler's 9-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son were found dead in a residential property in Colorado, along with her 11-year-old daughter, who was injured but alive. The woman initially collaborated with the investigation, but later reportedly disappeared, and an arrest warrant was issued for murder charges. She escaped the UK and was apprehended by the National Crime Agency in West London. Almost 30,000 migrants crossed the Channel to Britain in small boats last year. That's down by almost a third on the number of crossings from 2022, although it's the second largest total since numbers were first published 6 years ago. No attempts to cross the Channel have taken place since mid-December because of bad weather. And thousands gathered on the streets of London today to ring in the new year with the one and only pop singer Chesney Hawkes greeted spectators along the 2-mile route with dancers and brass bands. Families even witnessed a brief invasion.
Oppa Gangnam Style.
The 2024 parade, which started in 1987, marched from Green Park to the Palace of Westminster. This is GB News on TV, online, on DAB+ radio. We'll have more at the top of the hour.
OK, folks, it is time now for my brilliant pundits to make their predictions for 2024. Author and journalist Emma Wolf, TV star Junaid Ahmed and GB News icon Bev Turner. OK, Emma, your predictions. First of all, the world of royalty, Harry and Meghan. Are they going to hold it together this year?
No, I think they're going to split. I think they're going to do it in a really annoying way, a kind of conscious uncoupling. It's all very mutual and respectful. And I think Harry will return to the UK. I think that's where, then he can manage all his lawsuits from back here. He can do all his libel cases from back here. I don't think he's happy out there. I don't think they're happy. I don't think it's working.
Wow, I mean, that's a devastating verdict. What do you think for the Sussexes in 2024? They've got their work cut out to rebuild the brand, haven't they?
Yeah, but I don't think they can. Like, their charity was losing millions at the end of this year, of 2023, and I think that I'm with you, Emma. I'm not sure they're going to last the distance. I think Kate and Wills will continue to win the battle of PR, which they do every single time, by retaining a dignified silence. That's what Kate and Wills will do, and I think Harry and Meghan are probably going to hit the skids. I hate to say it, because you don't want any marriage to fall apart, but I think it's a inevitability, don't you?
Well, listen, we know they've got lovely kids. We want them to be happy together. I shouldn't wish any couple to split, Junaid, but do you think those two are on borrowed time?
I mean, I love them both. I personally do. I'm a sucker for a good love story. I think they've been through so much publicly and everyone's been speaking about it. I mean, I'm hoping they can. Who knows what's going to happen, but I do love a good love story.
Do you think there are pressures on that marriage?
I think there's so much pressure. I think in the positions that they're in, everything that's happened in the media and everyone's spoken about it, I think there is a lot of pressure, but who knows, will true love last?
And Meghan is positioning herself, don't forget, to move into American politics.
Yes.
So she will be out and about this year with an American election coming up. She will be working it on behalf of the Democratic Party, and just watch what she does this year is my prediction.
Well, I'm hoping and praying they can keep Joe Biden alive long enough that she never becomes president. Put him in a cryogenic chamber and keep him going, because we cannot have President Meghan Markle, can we, Emma?
Not yet. Stranger things have happened.
I'm here for it.
I really, like the others, I don't want to predict the end of a marriage. That's a really horrible, kind of nasty thing to do. But I genuinely think that when you are both sides of a couple have alienated all of their family, all of their immediate family, there's something not right between them. There's something that is not happy, that they are not able to radiate happiness, that they are alienating all their friends, all their family.
So, more predictions. Does Keir Starmer become Prime Minister this year?
Really painfully, I think he probably does, but I think it's not going to be a straightforward election in any sense. I think it's going to be one of those contested, you know, can we cobble together votes?
Too close to call.
Too close to call, but we end up with Keir Starmer in number 10.
I see. So you don't think a bumper landslide?
No.
Interesting. And why do you say that?
I think it's going to be a very low turnout, and I think it's going to, the right is going to split all over the place. And I don't think it's going. I don't think there's an upswell of support for Labour, but I think they'll end up there.
Why do you say that you worry that Keir Starmer's going to become Prime Minister? Why do you say that without enthusiasm?
Because I don't know any of his. He seems bereft of policies. The whole front bench makes me want to pull my hair out. I'm not ideologically able to get behind.
So what you're worried about is that you don't know what you're getting with Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
I kind of know what we're getting, and I'm not looking forward to it.
You don't like the look of it. I mean, do you think we'll see if he gets the job? First of all, is he going to win the election, Bev?
For me, the first question is, when is the election going to be? And that will be the deciding factor. If Rishi Sunak feels there's not enough good news by May, and I don't think there will be enough good news by May, he could push it till the end of the year. He might push it to January 2025. If he's just keeping everything crossed that the economy's going to pick up, he's going to stop the boats, he's going to improve the NHS, all of that, then it could be a Conservative win. And it might not be Rishi Sunak in the driving seat. If it goes to the end of this year, if you think about that, it might be, they might parachute somebody else in because he is so unpopular.
You raise a good point. If it was autumn, there is time to get those letters in. There's time for the grassroots membership to actually vote, because we know it takes a few months. Potentially 2025 of January. I mean, that's clinging on for dear life, isn't it? That's like when your girlfriend won't leave the flat when you've dumped her.
But you can
keeping the CDs.
You can hear the ice cracking beneath his feet.
You can.
No, I never
could have Prime Minister Kemi.
We could have Prime Minister Kemi by January 25.
Would a new face at the top move the dial for the Tories?
I believe so, but I've been saying that on Britain's Newsroom for the last few months, and every Conservative politician we've had in the studio and every Conservative commentator has said, we can't do it, we can't risk it. Well, they can't risk it now, but they might risk it in a year's time.
So do the Tories get rid of Rishi Sunak before the public do, Junaid?
I mean, to be fair, I'm on the fence with this one. It's a difficult one for me because everyone's got their own opinions and everyone's entitled to their own opinions. I just don't know, personally. I think you're either for or against, and I'll be honest, I've never wanted to be on the fence, but I think on this occasion, I'll just sit back and see what people say and do.
See what... do you think Labour are going to win the election, though? Do you think they're a shoo-in?
I don't... Do you know, I hear so many different opinions, and especially, I'm from, a younger generation, and everyone has...
Don't rub it in.
They don't normally hear other opinions.
I just thought you moisturised.
Pardon?
I just thought you moisturised.
6 layers of foundation, a lot of moisturiser. This is what I look like.
Don't worry, we're getting all his makeup secrets later.
I think, obviously, my friendship and my friends is so split between Tories and Labour, so you just never know.
What do people your age, what are they saying?
Do you know what? It's a difficult one because there's so many mixed opinions, and I think some of my friends are all for Tories, some of them are all for Labour, and I think the more you kind of dig deep into it, I think people my age, you don't really dig that deep into it, and that's the truth.
And I think what's so interesting about that is the fact that there is no clear distinction between them.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's why your generation, some people like the Tories, some people like Labour, because you can't can't distinguish between them at the moment. And, of course, don't forget reform. And give it another year. Let's see where reform are in a year's time.
So they could have a solid 2024 and a massive 2025.
Absolutely.
Here's another possibility, Bev Turner. 2 elections in a year. Because Rishi Sunak could go to the country in May. And the result could be inconclusive, and they could go back to the public with another poll a couple of months down the line. That's not impossible. That happened in the 70s.
Do you mean inconclusive, or you mean like a hung parliament?
Well, like a hung parliament, but like a minority government where they weren't able to actually form a coalition. That is always possible.
That's what I mean about a messy, nasty
mathematically,
election.
there could be 2 elections in a year.
Yeah.
Which I think would probably finish the country off for good, wouldn't it?
I'd love it, but yeah, no, it would finish us all off for good.
It would. But that's why I think they're going to be looking at the strategy. It's going to be all about when do they pull the trigger on the election. That is going to be the key thing this year.
Yeah.
And where's Richard Tice going to be? It might be that Richard Tice of this parish does play some sort of role in that
He could be a kingmaker, absolutely.
He could be.
A quick word, Bev, on political correctness this coming year. Wokery. Will it die a slow death?
When I talk to my teenagers, I have hope, because they say to me, Mummy, you know it's all rubbish, that when they say that a girl is a boy and a boy is a girl, we don't believe any of that. So they give me a little bit of hope.
You are watching Mark Dolan tonight on New Year's Day. Lots more to come. Don't go anywhere.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vaultry here for GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. 2023 was a wetter than average year for the vast majority of us, and 2024 has started off on a relatively similar theme. We've got this band of rain sweeping its way across the majority of the UK. We'll start falling a snow over higher ground areas of Scotland as it pushes into colder air ahead of it. Some travel disruption is possible overnight, with strong winds developing across southern coastal areas of England and for Shetland and Orkney as well. Temperatures in the south will be relatively mild, dropping down to around 11-12 degrees Celsius, but some frost is possible for Scotland first thing on Tuesday. That band of rain will push its way northwards, eventually stalling across the far northern Isles. Other southern eastern areas should see some brighter spells developing for the bank holiday here, but there's more rain on the cards for England, Wales, perhaps into the far southeast of Northern Ireland, eventually spreading into the far south of Scotland as well. So some localised flooding is possible during Tuesday. Temperatures generally ranging between 8 and 13 degrees Celsius, but probably feeling colder due to the strength of the winds. One of those areas of low pressure does eventually clear its way off towards the continent, but we've got another one that is lingering to northwest of the UK as we head into Wednesday, still with some persistent rainfall for parts of Shetland and Orkney, some strong gales here as well. Further brisk westerly winds pushing in showers for the rest of the UK. Most of those showers frequent in the west and heavy at times, some brighter spells perhaps for eastern areas. Showers turning fewer and further between as we head to the second half of the week. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Well, it was a very busy 2023 for Mark Dolan tonight. Here is another highlight. Great to have you in the studio, Sahil. Thank you for joining us. How did you get sucked into being a Hamas supporter?
See, it started at a very young age. I was radicalized from the age 6 onwards, which some people might find surprising. You don't think of people being radicalized at such a young age, but I was. And I was raised with this hate-filled ideology whereby I believed Britain was the enemy. I believed that non-Muslims are in a perpetual war against Muslims. It's just the standard extremist Islamist kind of ideology that I was just raised in.
Was it family members or friends or people you didn't know that were grooming you in this way?
It was my parents, in fact.
Right.
They had themselves become extreme.
What did this group get you to do? I mean, did you actively participate in any way? Did you attend meetings? What was your sort of role within this grouping?
Absolutely, I wasn't involved in any sort of group per se. I was always kind of on my own. So I never officially joined a group as such, but I believed entirely in the ideology.
And were you online reading materials? And also were you communicating with others online about your beliefs?
Yes, unfortunately, and I'm very ashamed to say so. I did have a role to play in spreading this ideology. And that's something that I will take with me to the grave.
How would that manifest itself in terms of you having spread the ideology? What did you do?
So in college, for instance, I was very well known in the Islamic society. And I convinced a lot of people to become extremists like me. I didn't kind of say anything about terrorism. There was no support for violence in terms of my convincing others, but it was the rest of the extremist ideology. That was what I was pushing.
The idea that the West is the enemy.
Exactly.
And that you're either a believer or an infidel.
Yes.
What are the goals of Hamas, given the fact that you were embedded in its ideology, if not proactively within the group, but just the ideas of Hamas? What is their goal?
Their goal is to eliminate Israel, wipe it off the map. They do not want any sort of negotiation. They do not want a two-state solution. They don't want a solution at all. The only solution they are for is wiping Israel off the map, and that will involve genocide.
How much support do Hamas have among Palestinians? Is that question even possible to answer?
It's very difficult to answer because obviously you can't kind of study and do polling data in the Gaza Strip with Hamas in charge. But from what I've seen and from what I've gleaned, especially from friends that live in the Gaza Strip, it is very widespread.
And What was the trigger that inspired you to walk away from this ideology?
It was a number of things, but chief among them, it was my understanding evolutionary biology. Might sound strange.
So science saved you?
Science did indeed save me. But I realized that contradicted my entire ideology. And I was forced then to change. My entire world just unraveled.
Because you learnt about the origins of humanity via nature, and this contradicted the theology preached by the likes of Hamas.
It wasn't just that, but there were other incidents too. For instance, once I went to a Jewish home. I was selling a computer to them. And the little toddler, they had a little kid, came up to me and suddenly just became attached to me. And the parent said, he wants to play with you. So I was really young. I sat down and started playing with his toy cars. And his parents were looking on what was happening and smiling. And I remember looking across at them and thinking, I hate them, but they don't hate me. In fact, they're trusting me with their child. And that changed a lot for me.
Whilst I do too every night, I will say that this guy is the king of the political monologue. Those on the left consider him a dangerous grifter, sowing lies, division and hate, but his fans on the right can't get enough of a broadcaster who they consider speaks truth to power, stands up for traditional American values and offers a critical and authentic commentary on this ever-changing world. But notwithstanding his massive evening audience, the Fox News network sensationally fired him in April of this year. Why did they do that? What's next for him? And what does his story tell us about the future of political discourse, not just in America, but the UK and beyond? Well, all of these questions are explored in a fascinating new biography simply called Tucker. It's one of the most eagerly anticipated books of the year. Its author, journalist Chadwick Moore, joins me now. Chadwick, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. For those of my viewers and listeners who are not up to speed on Tucker Carlson, why is he such an influential figure in America and around the world? What does he do that other broadcasters don't?
Well, I mean, he's a rare talent. He's a once-in-a-generation talent in the vein of Rush Limbaugh. He's really kind of the only person who compares. You know, he's a conservative powerhouse. He was the most watched cable news host in history at a time when I think he was sort of artificially propping up the relevance of and legitimacy of a lot of cable news shows and networks. You know, and he is, you know, he kind of stumbled into television. He came into this. He's a very literary guy, and he's someone who I think just deeply has a lot of deep passions and concerns about this country. You know, he covered things on his show. I saw in that great clips you just showed. He had, you know, a bunch of like animal segments and things like that. He's a big lover of nature and animals. And he wouldn't cover something unless he deeply believed in it. He wouldn't look to the front page of the New York Times to see what the news of the day was, which basically everyone in cable in this country does. But he decided what the news was. He decided what he felt was important and what people should hear about. And he had a connection with his audience that really no one else on television has ever had and has been able to imitate since he left. You know, people really felt a deep connection to this man, and that he was speaking for millions of people who don't have a voice in mainstream media and in the official discourse of this country.
Indeed, and you mentioned voice. He is the most predominant anti-woke voice in America, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And he delivers that not just with facts and data and what have you, but with humor. I mean, he's a hilarious man. As I spent a lot of time over the last year with him personally, and I was a regular guest on his show before it got pulled off the air. And he's absolutely wickedly funny, as you can imagine. And he humiliates the left, and he mocks them in a way that really drives them insane. That being said, the left kind of needed Tucker Carlson. He didn't get canceled because from the left, it came from the right. And, you know, the left really hated him, but the right, the Republican establishment, absolutely feared him. They were the ones who really wanted him to be quiet, and they think they succeeded. Of course they didn't, but this is where we are today.
Well, that goes some way to answering my next question. Why was he fired by Fox News? Is it because Fox News themselves have gone woke?
Well, that's the $64 million question, or I should say 3.5 million viewer question. Fox News has still not given him official reason. They have not told anyone. And technically, he's still an employee of Fox. He's still getting paid. He's still under contract. They're paying him to be silent until his contract runs out, which is just after the next presidential election. So it seems almost inarguable that this was political. And you can look to the fact that they're threatening him now because he's talking on Twitter. They're trying to send him cease and desist. They also, in one fell swoop, laid off his entire team. This was about 25 people. That's not common for cable news. These people are hired to work for a network, not for a show. But they completely purged the highest performing producers in all of cable. So someone, whether it's on the board of Fox, whether it's the Murdochs themselves, whether it's any of these massive corporations that have controlling interests in News Corp, wanted him to be silent. They wanted him off the air, and that's what they've attempted to do.
The owner of a very successful restaurant in Ireland, Travode's, became a viral sensation after sending this tweet, in which the restaurant owner said, "Call me old-fashioned, but you're not allowed to use the ladies' toilet in our restaurant if you have a penis." Whilst there has been a predictable backlash from some quarters, Paul Travode has seen his eatery packed out ever since. In a recent interview, he has said, "Who knew a tweet about a willy could fill your restaurant?" Well, I'm delighted to say that Paul Travode joins me now. Paul, congratulations. Apparently, you've never been so busy.
Well, I tell you, millions spent on marketing over all the years, and you mentioned the word willy or penis in a tweet, and all of a sudden it fills your restaurant. It's incredible.
What motivated you to send the tweet, Paul?
Well, there was a conference in town in one of the hotels, and town is Killarney here in County Kerry, one of the most stunning locations you'll find anywhere in the world. And it was basically saying it was a trans conference, and they said, listen, we want to remove ladies' toilets and gents' toilets from the signs on the doors, and we want to just call them toilets. And so I'm a firm believer ladies' toilets is a safe space for ladies, girls. And I turned around and I said, well, that's, you're guaranteed one thing when you come into Travode's is that if you do have a penis, you're not getting into my ladies' toilets.
Okay, and what was the initial reaction, Paul?
I'll be honest with you, Mark, I was amazed. I mean, look, I have 2 TV shows on Amazon Prime. I've got quite a prolific social media platform. And I knew that, I was going to draw a bit of attention. Put it this way, if I didn't get the negative comments, I was doing something wrong. So it started off the usual 1 or 2 kind of going, oh, you bigot, you transphobe, all these kind of names. And that's kind of what you get from people who lack the intelligence to be able to have a debate with you. And then all of a sudden, more and more people saw what I was saying. And then all of a sudden they started saying, thank you so much for speaking out for us and for defending us. Look, like most people, Mark, I've got my wife, I've got my mother, I've got my sister, I've got my nieces, even my mother-in-law. I love them all way too much to be able to make a scenario where potentially a man can put on a dress, slap a little bit of lipstick on and say, I'm a woman for the next hour or 2, and walk into the safe space, which is toilets, ladies' toilets in, whether it be a restaurant, a bar, or a nightclub or something like that. So I said, during COVID, I'm from an industry that was shut down for the best part of 2.5, 3 years here in Ireland. And I said, the only way you can debate something like this is to force the debate. So if you have to come out with something as rash as a tweet like that, then therefore we force the debate. And here we are. We're talking on a massive TV show here in the UK about, men can't be just flippantly walk into a ladies' toilet.
Absolutely right. And I'm sure you're not transphobic. I'm sure you're a very liberal chap, and you would take the view if someone wishes to identify by a different gender, good luck to them. But if you have a male physiology, if you're a biological male, you have no place in the ladies' restroom.
And that's 100% right. And we've got to force the debate on the fact that unfortunately, there are people out there who will basically take advantage of a scenario if people are afraid to say something. So you could have the potential of a man that is potentially assault a woman or a young girl inside in the toilets, and we need to address that very carefully. So you can't, and most people are afraid to say because there is a backlash. Of course there's going to be an online backlash, and normally it's from somebody like Johnny4927 on Twitter that has a picture of a goat as his profile picture because he's an absolute coward that will call you every name under the sun. But if I stand up and say it, and then all of a sudden you have me on such a fantastic platform like this, more and more people will become confident enough to turn around and say, actually, this is true. Anybody can just put on a dress, slap on a bit of lipstick, a little bit of mascara, and call themselves a woman and put themselves into that position where they could potentially assault or seriously harm a woman. And I'm not gonna allow that to happen.
OK, folks, time for a quick break. I'll see you in 2.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. It is that time of year when you start thinking about your body. You want to get in shape. You want to lose the Christmas flab. And there are lots of options. The Atkins diet, low carb, calorie counting, Weight Watchers. But do diets work? Let's get the views of my top pundits tonight. Author and journalist Emma Wolf, TV star Junaid Ahmed, and GB News' very own, very svelte, very slimline Bev Turner. In fact, you're all great specimens, perfect people to debate diets. Junaid, have you ever been on a diet?
Yeah, loads. Tried everything, but I'm very much new year, new me, new start, go to the gym, start eating healthy, and I live by that.
Well, you look very, very slim. So have you had success with any of the diets you've done?
No. No.
Really? I mean, which ones have you tried?
I mean, I do a lot of intermittent fasting. I've heard, obviously, like the Cambridge diet. There's a few that I've, tried and dabbled into, but I think for me personally, if I eat healthy and I go to the gym, I lose the weight I want to lose. There's no kind of drastic measures that I need to go down, but I do tend to do intermittent fasting quite a lot. I won't eat until 2 p.m.
Right, so take us through it. Intermittent fasting, it's been made popular by people like Dr. Michael Mosley. I think it's the sort of Fast 800 diet, which is... and then he had the... was it the 2-3 diet, where you eat for a couple of days?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
5-3. 5-3 diet.
5-3, 4-3.
What is intermittent fasting then? Explain it to us.
So for me, obviously, I'm no nutritionist or anything like that. I'm just a pretty face and I like to intermittent fast. For me, it makes me feel good. So I will potentially wake up at 7 a.m. in the morning, but I won't eat until 2 p.m. So that whole period of time is intermittent fast.
Just maybe a black coffee or something like that, nothing else?
Water.
Water.
A lot of water I drink.
And are you not starving for those hours when you don't eat?
I am, but I think about myself and what I've got coming up, and if I'm filming, I want to make sure I look my best. So for me, it's the best way to kind of lose weight, be healthy, but also enjoy my diet and enjoy going to the gym.
And I think the idea of the intermittent fasting is that you're essentially obviously without food for a certain number of hours. The insulin drops down, which is the big fat storage hormone of the body. And so the longer that your insulin is low, the more fat burning you've got. So it seems to work for people. And it's this idea of a window of time, isn't it? So some people will just eat for an 8-hour window. So it might be sort of midday to 8 p.m. is the window in which they eat, but they won't eat after 8 and they won't eat before 12.
I pretty much do that in my daily life as well now.
Oh, there you go.
Whether I'm intermittent fasting or not, I won't eat after 8 p.m.
And what is the Cambridge diet?
The Cambridge diet is shakes. So I'll have a shake for breakfast, a shake for lunch, and then a tiny chicken salad for dinner. Don't know if that's the best thing for anyone. Just make sure, obviously, if it's for your body type and whatnot. But for me, sometimes I can do that. But I'm 6'2". I'm 27 years old and it doesn't always work.
Well, I love your vital statistics, let me tell you. Bev Turner, do diets
Don't ask
work?
me my vital statistics.
I've already Googled yours. I've got them written down. But listen, do diets work?
Look, I think what I probably do, I'm lucky. I was raised to have a very healthy relationship with food. My mum was home cooking all the time, healthy soups, home and cakes and stuff as well, but always home cooked. And we swam. I had a sporty childhood, so I swam every day. That gave me a really good foundation.
And
so
when we were kids, because we're a similar vintage, we were not allowed to snack, were we?
No, there was no such thing as snacks. And my mum just didn't. We just didn't have it in the house. We didn't have biscuits. We didn't have crisps. We didn't have all that. But I think what I do probably is I'm sort of mentally calibrating throughout the day. How much am I moving? And how much am I eating?
Yeah.
So if I know that I'm going to have, and I love my food and I love my booze, and if I know that I'm going to be eating and drinking a lot, I'll go, do you know what, I'm going to put my trainers on, and before I jump in the shower, I'm going to run around the block 3 times just because I'm going to have a lovely day. And I don't want to be obsessive about anything. A little bit of everything, but get moving. That's the most important.
Have you ever tried diets? Not that you've ever needed it, but have you ever tried them?
No, not as such. I think, I modelled when I was younger, and there was a lot of pressure then to be thinner. And probably I went through a time in my life where I was counting calories. But I think there was no bad thing. I was kind of educating myself. So now when I'm going, OK, well, that latte is probably going to be 150 calories. I'm probably doing it subconsciously now because I've kind of got used to doing it as I've got older. But home cooking and drinking loads of water and everything in moderation, I would say.
Now, it's very important, is it, Emma, that we say to our viewers and listeners that if you're going to change your diet, if you're going to try to lose weight, consult your doctor, because there are some crazy diets out there that can be very harmful to your health. But January is an opportunity to have not just a new career, a new lifestyle, but a new body as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say a new body, but a new start, a new fresh start. For some people, that is really helpful. January the 1st feels like a fresh start. I'm really glad, though, that you had Bev's point of view and then Janae's point of view, because they have just, for me, encapsulated. I've written a lot about dieting and body image and all of that. And they've encapsulated to me, and forgive me, a really unhealthy approach to dieting and a really healthy approach. And the reason it's unhealthy, your approach, is that it's very binge cravey. So fasting, and then you're like, I'm 27 years old, 6'2", you need fuel. Then your body needs food. And that's why you're kind of being trapped in that cycle. Whereas what Bev is talking about is literally just moving, being active throughout the day. So you don't even go and blast it at the gym for 60 minutes. You just move the whole time, you go for a run, you balance it. And I think that's what's really helpful. And the reason that I think people get caught in the diet cycle is because they try, say, 5-2, that 5-2 diet that we were talking about. Yeah. If you starve yourself 5 days a week, you're going to go mad on the 2nd, on the 6th and 7th day because you're very, very hungry. Everything in moderation is absolutely the key. And if things aren't banned, if chocolate, a little bit of cake, whatever, a little glass of wine isn't banned, it doesn't become this obsession. You don't end up in the binge eating cycle that many people do.
Have you done diets? Because most women...
Oh, my God. Well, I nearly died. I had anorexia for 10 years.
You had anorexia for 10 years?
I had anorexia for 10 years. So have I done diets? Well, yeah, kind of like the diet where you just live on fresh air and water. So yeah, it's incredibly important that people do get help if they feel they're trapped in that kind of extreme position. And we know that eating disorders soared as a result of the pandemic because people are alone and they're obsessing and all of that unhealthy
and
stuff.
I always think, try and tap into your emotional relationship to food. We eat to reward or to comfort or control.
Oh, there you go. Well, look, my three brilliant pundits whose bodies are collective temples, let me tell you. Can I just put my 2 pennies worth in? Let me reiterate, any changes to your diet, consult your doctor. But can I just tell you what I did, which is that I was getting a bit of a porker. I had the dad bod. I cut the carbs, right? Got my carbohydrates right down. And I did basically what David Unwin, the NHS GP, recommends. You can Google him. Michael Mosley's book, I think, is excellent. Dietdoctor.com is another useful resource. And that is basically a low-carb diet. It worked for me. I lost 3 stone, had loads of energy. But whatever you do take medical advice and do stay safe. OK, lots more to come. This is Mark Dolan Tonight.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight. Let's take another trip down memory lane and a couple of highlights from 2023. Congratulations on your survival. How close were you to death?
Well, Mark, I don't really know. I think luck and if there is a God, he was looking after me, because it was so close on many occasions that that my luck turned the right way. It was I've been telling this story now. It's nearly 60 years since my shark attack, and I've had to tell it so often I can relive it and remember most of the bits about it. So it's got me a lot of free drinks around the world, I can tell you.
Rightly so. Can you tell me about the terror of being attacked by one of these creatures? The emotions as it's happening?
Yeah, I was in the South Australian Spearfishing Championships. There were 40 divers, and we had to weigh in 2 of each species of fish. And spearfishing in those days was a fairly big thing, and hardly anybody had entered the sea and knew much about sharks. You know, in those days, the best shark was a dead shark, and if you know every shark, and there were so many hundreds. I see you've got a great white there on the screen now, and it was amazing. I had never seen one before. I swam well offshore trying to get a special fish called a dusky moorworm, and I dived, holding my breath. I dived down in about 20 metres of water, and I was just saw the fish I wanted, and I was drifting in with my gun in front of me, and I knew I had that fish. I was so close, and I was just about to squeeze the trigger when this huge thump and crash hit me in the chest, knocked the gun out of my hand, the mask off my face, and I was hurled through the water faster than I'd ever swam before. First of all, I thought I'd been hit by a train. I don't know, but that just entered my mind. And then I realised I was underwater and it had to be a giant shark. Now, I talked to a couple of the guys about what we could do to protect ourselves. So I gouged its eyes as much as I could, and it seemed to let me go. And I pushed off, but my hand went in its mouth right over its big white teeth, and I dragged them out, and before it could bite me again, I put my arms around its body in a bear hug and held on so it couldn't bite me. And then I realised I'm still 20 metres underwater holding my breath and I'm going to drown. So I headed to the surface and I got up and took one breath, and then this memories that I have now of this big head coming towards me with big white teeth through pink water, which is all my blood. And it's coming, and I thought, I have nothing to protect myself. What can I do? What can I do? I kicked as hard as I could, and I kicked at the shark's head, but it turned and swallowed two fish that I had on a buoy, and that was connected to my waist. And the shark grabbed that, dived, and dragged me underwater again. So I'm spinning behind the rope, and I'm trying to reach the rope with my good hand because my right hand was badly mangled, and I couldn't find the quick release. But a miracle happened. The line broke. The shark had actually severed 3/4 the way through the line when it bit me around the chest. So I managed to get to the surface, and another miracle, a boat was coming over to look what all this red water was. And I came up in the middle of it. They dragged me in, raced me into hospital at speeds. The ambulance had 2 policemen with sirens on the front of it, and they stopped all the red lights, and the doctor stitched me up, and he was quite pleased with himself that I survived.
Yeah, I mean, the medics, Rodney, the medics did a great job. This was in 1963. No disrespect, but they didn't have the technology or the expertise that we have now, did they? How long was your recuperation?
It was a 4 or 5 hour operation. Somebody worked on my hand while the other guy worked on my chest. And my lung, I had 29 stitches in my lung, and I asked the doctor how they went about it, which was quite interesting, really. He was a bit of a dry doctor in his speech, and he said to me, well, first of all, we put 29 stitches in the lung. There was a little bit left over, so we gave it off, cut it off and gave it to the hospital cat. Then he said we pulled in the diaphragm, and then we had to join up all of the ribs because every rib in your left side was broken. We joined up the ribs and then the muscles, and then like any good plumber, he said, we covered in the hole. And then I think everybody prayed, and I managed to survive.
Well, look, I'm so glad you did. You're a wonderful man. After a long recovery, you faced your fears. You started the Rodney Fox Shark Expeditions, the world's only ocean floor shark cage experience. You established the Fox Shark Research Foundation with the aim of educating people about the importance of these animals for the ecosystem, and you advised on the movie Jaws. It's been a privilege to have you on the show, Rodney. Keep on fighting.
I was unconscious for perhaps a couple of minutes.
Right.
But then I awoke as the train departed and crushed my arm above the elbow. I felt a flash of pain at that moment, but then all I could focus on was, how do I save myself? This is not a great situation to be in. And I screamed for help.
And your screams were not heard?
No.
Is that because people were not nearby, or was the station noisy? Do we know why you weren't heard?
I don't know. It's an overground station where I was, and I asked about CCTV being watched. I thought CCTV was being watched live.
You would expect.
But it's not. I was given the excuse that, oh, we see so many thousands of feeds, no human can watch that full time. And I thought, in the day of artificial intelligence, you would think that that's a good use of it. So yeah, I spent 15 minutes on the tracks, and I have white blonde hair, and I was wearing a neon pink coat.
Yeah.
It wasn't that late. It was about 9-ish on a Friday, which is not a late time.
But it's clear to you that nobody noticed. You don't think that you were seen and people didn't act, do you? Or is that possible?
I don't think so. I think if people would have seen me or heard, they would have raised the alarm.
You lost your arm. How long did it take for the next train to take your leg?
That was within those 15 minutes. So the second train came in. And again, second opportunity here would have been to see me on the tracks, but the train driver did not see me. Where again, you think, why? Why? You're driving into a station, you look in front of you and on the side. I was there and clearly visible.
Well, I know that you feel very strongly, and I think rightly you feel strongly, that this was avoidable. All of these moments were avoidable, and we'll come to that. But I understand that it was thinking about your daughters that kept you going as you lay on the tracks.
Absolutely. There's something really strange that happens when I knew I was in a very dangerous situation. I knew that I was losing a lot of blood. I knew that I didn't have very long. And it was the thought of my children that really kept me going. And I really could see them in my mind's eye where they were like, Mummy, what are you doing? You're supposed to be home. And I guess it's a mother's instinct that just gets you that hysterical strength where you really hang on. And I slowed down my heartbeat. I really tried not to panic because my instinct was, if I panic, I'm going to lose more blood.
Extraordinary. And after 15 minutes, the signal was raised, the alert was raised, someone did discover you.
Heard me because I didn't stop shouting for help. Right. Increasingly louder and louder and louder, you know.
You were finally heard after 15 minutes, but it took an hour for the rescue, the emergency services to arrive.
Yes, and I think that there was a difficulty calling the right number, which to me is completely unbelievable. You find somebody who's under a train, you call 999. There's no doubt about that. But apparently they were looking for numbers, calling the wrong numbers, people not answering, and then they didn't find the right person to turn off the power line. And so nobody could get to me.
Have TfL, who operate the London Underground, taken responsibility? Have they said sorry?
They have not taken responsibility for what happened. As a matter of fact, they have alleged at first that I was intoxicated, that perhaps I was wearing the wrong footwear, high heels, and that's why I didn't pay attention enough and fell through the gap. And also, everywhere it says quite clearly, mind the gap. And so pushing the responsibility on the passenger, and I thought that to be really unfair because they had no proof either way, you know, whether I wasn't intoxicated and I wore flat shoes.
And even if you were wearing high heels and even if you were intoxicated, that's not relevant.
It's not relevant.
If you fall onto the tracks, surely that falls into their remit of responsibility.
Exactly.
And what about the mayor, Sadiq Khan? I understand you've reached out to him.
So, yes, via my MP, who's Keir Starmer, I asked for... I've asked for, a meeting with the chair of TfL, which is Sadiq Khan, and I also wanted to meet with the commissioner of TfL, and both have declined to speak to me.
I know that you want lasting change to be the legacy of this. Tell me about your petition.
Well, I've launched a petition on change.org, and the ask here is for an inquiry into the safety measures for TfL, for the London Underground, because what shocks me the most is that they have tried to describe this as a freak accident, when in fact, according to their own numbers, it happens to people more often than you think it does. 16 people a month sustain severe injuries like mine or die.
It's been a great show. Thank you so much for watching. That's about all the time we've got, but I'll catch you soon. Keep it on GB News.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vautry here for GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. 2023 was a wetter than average year for the vast majority of us, and 2024 has started off on a relatively similar theme. We've got this band of rain sweeping its way across the majority of the UK. It will start falling as snow over higher ground areas of Scotland as it pushes into colder air ahead of it. Some travel disruption is possible overnight with strong winds developing across southern coastal areas of England and for Shetland and Orkney as well. Temperatures in the south will be relatively mild, dropping down to around 11-12 degrees Celsius, but some frost is possible for Scotland first thing on Tuesday. That band of rain will push its way northwards, eventually stalling across the far northern Isles. Other southern eastern areas should see some brighter spells developing for the bank holiday here, but there's more rain on the cards for England, Wales, perhaps into the far southeast of Northern Ireland, eventually spreading into the far south of Scotland as well. So some localised flooding is possible during Tuesday. Temperatures generally ranging between 8 and 13 degrees Celsius, but probably feeling colder due to the strength of the winds. One of those areas of low pressure does eventually clear its way off towards the continent, but we've got another one that is lingering to northwest of the UK as we head into Wednesday. Still with some persistent rainfall for parts of Shetland and Orkney, some strong gales here as well. Further brisk westerly winds pushing in showers for the rest of the UK. Most of those showers frequent in the west and heavy at times. Some brighter spells perhaps for eastern areas. Showers turning fewer and further between as we head to the second half of the week. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.